Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, maybe some pictures, and then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. Let's waste no time. Oh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 1. What happened at the Bigley Center? Dan Pompley has a report published April 26th explaining how the Bigley Center at Youngstown State University was evacuated Friday after a pool cleaning accident released toxic gas. Now, this is word for word according to the headline. Now, the last incident similar to this one happened at the downtown YMCA some time ago. Now, thus keeping the attention on local safety when handling hazmat hazards. Story number 2. Gas leaks concern still in top headlines. Mike Guntner of WFMJ has a report out of Boardman in what appears to be a gas odor that came out of Mill Creek Park after workers were installing a utility pole that ruptured a gas line, according to the report. Now, Mill Creek Park hike and bike trail north of Route 224 in Boardman were all evacuated this past Tuesday around 8:15 a.m. This is yet another incident involving a gas mishap. Now, no injuries were reported. The trail was opened back up after the fire department gave the okay. That's what's in the report. Now, this is yet another story keeping safety in top headlines. Story number 3. Kilcawley gets another donation. $272,000 is the number donated by Evelyn Steffens, who I guess was a special education teacher at YSU. Now, this is I guess she passed away, her and her husband, but this was in the report. Now, the donation was made to support university priorities and initiatives that most directly benefit YSU students and their educational experiences, according to a Mediator report published April 26. Now, the report says that Tom Steffens passed away in 2020, and I guess Evelyn Steffens in 2022. I always want to fact check this stuff. That's why I'm saying that the report says is now that they both have left a lasting legacy at the university. Story number 4. Locals take a stand against ICE contract in Youngstown. Sheen Barron has a report published April 26. Now, it appears that protesters are not happy with ICE contract with the Mahoning County Jail. Now, the article explains how the Mahoning County Sheriff's Office has signed a contract to house ICE detainees. The report goes on by stating that the contract will mean an additional $4.5 million annually for the county, according to Sheriff Jerry Green. Which I guess the main reason why he took the contract is due to the rainy day fund benefits that we'll have from getting some extra money. Now, the peaceful protest that took place seems to be based on due process for migrants rather than what's in it for the county justice system in regards to financial gains, thus getting this story into the top 8. 15 YSU students got their visas revoked due to the crackdown on illegal immigration. Story number 5. Southern Park Mall is staying in top headlines. WFMJ has a report published April 25th because it appears that Mahoning County Auditor Ralph Meacham has stated that the company has incurred a 10% penalty on taxes. I guess it's $43,783.71. I guess that's incurred due to interest on late fees, late taxes. Now, the mall has stayed in top headlines due to the transition to new ownership, folks. This story is still developing. Story number 6, another concern in Trumbull County. Raymond L. Smith has a report published April 30th out of Warren. It appears the concern now is increased insurance costs from $825,384 that will end this week. I guess it will go to $1,229,692. Now, what got the story in is the fact that this increase This is a net increase of about 23.25%. That's a big number. Now, Trumbull County is under a self-insurance program called County Risk Sharing Authority, also known as CORSA, CORSA, according to the report. Now, the article goes on to say that Trumbull County Human Resource Director Alexandra Davengency Bush says she informed the previous board that the costs would rise. Now, the article is very informative in regard to rising costs and concerns ahead of Trumbull County. The article does cite a solution to the problem. Folks, this story is still developing. Story number 7 in the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week for you to keep you informed. Folks, if you don't get up this early and you do want to check out the show, I do upload it to the website on Mondays to our YouTube page. So if you don't get up this early, you can check out the website on Mondays. Story number 7. Insight furloughs still in top headlines, folks. Insight is keeping local hospitals in the headlines. Now, if you did not know, about 143 employees have been laid off due to a lack of funding. Now, multiple local headlines point to Steward Health's bankruptcy as the issue keeping the attention on the financial health of local hospitals. Now, at the moment, Insight is seeking new sources of funding in hopes that they can call the employees back onto the job within the next 6 months. Now, there is no guarantee, but the current condition of the local healthcare system is what has this story. Story number 8 and the top local headline and developing news story this week for you. Keep you informed, folks. If you do want to show some support, it does not take much. All you do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, feel something, watch something, read something, order a sponsor program, or you can stop at store 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio, and see my smiling face in the store. Story number 8. It may be time to assess the local healthcare system, folks. If you did not know, Mahoning County has lost 2 hospitals, Northside Medical Center, I think that happened about 2018, and Trumbull Regional Medical Center just happened in 2024. Now, this is not a good stat to have for any community. If you take it back to 2018, that's when Northside Medical Center closed, and now we have the current problems with Trumbull Regional Medical Center and Hillside Rehabilitation Center all closing due to Steward Health's problems. Now, the loss of beds and many other factors are keeping this story in top headlines. In fact, you're losing jobs, money, and you're losing those hospital beds. This is a big concern, especially when you have people who are looking for another job and they may have to relocate, and you're losing population. So that's some of these people probably can't pay the bills. That's the rate made to the top this week. We'll focus on our top 8 local headlines, developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. The Mediator, me, Brian West. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week, folks. It's Cinco de Mayo this week, and a lot of conflicting reports, especially when you look at the immigration data and what's been happening, and just a lot going on. And I often run into people who are in need, especially like you'll see people who are not from this country. They'll be out in front of like a store asking for money, or they'll be doing something they got no business doing. They'll ask you for money or ask you to borrow some money or donate or help them get somewhere they need to go. And you don't really know how many illegals are actually in the country. Now, I've always got along with people from other countries, especially when I was in the military. But this past week, a woman was outside of a store, and they always seem to come to me. My sister says, because Brian, you look like such a nice guy. You're just a nice guy. That's probably why they come up to you. So she comes up to me, and she wants to. They always want to borrow money or say they have to get to somewhere. You don't know if you're being scammed. You don't know anything. So one lady, she had a bunch of kids, and she had an able-bodied, looked like maybe her husband or something. Then she came to me, sir, could you loan us some money so I could feed my family? And I'm looking at her, and I'd been through this before where I'd actually been, scammed. It happens to anybody. It can happen to anybody. And I get tired of it. So I think what I'm gonna start doing is probably just carrying canned goods in the trunk, just in case if somebody asks me for some money, I say, well, if you need something to eat, here's some can of, like some beef chef Boyardee or something. So to make a long story short, when she came up to me, I'm not gonna lie, I was defeated inside because I was scammed before, and I just get tired of it. So I told her no. I said, no, I'm not giving you any money. I'm not giving you anything. I said, I don't have it. I mean, everybody's going through hell right now financially. My mother's having cancer. I got to make sure she gets everything she needs to stay alive. And I said no. And I'm not gonna lie. Inside, I felt like I took a stand, like I took a stand against something, but I felt bad for her family. But she looked at me, she mean mugged me, like she was like upset with me. And when you do something like this, there's like some triggers that go off in your brain, especially if you're an empathetic person and you care about human beings, especially if you're in the charity business. And I felt like a nun on Easter Sunday saying no to a bunch of orphans. I just couldn't believe it. I said no. And being a superhero, always wanting to feel like a superhero, like you want to save somebody. When you say no in this situation, especially when you get mean mugged after all the good that you've done, it's never good enough. So we live in that time frame where people are just living, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. A lot of people are breaking the laws, and a lot of people just expect everybody just to bow down. But I'm looking at this situation, and it's really, you look at now, you see why a lot of people just start to say no. Sometimes it's just out of your control. It's not your responsibility, especially if you cannot do it. And I just could not do it. So that's our story this week, heading, especially on Single Day Mile, where you have a lot of people who come into the country. And I always say, well, what would the legal immigrants say? The people who have fought for their citizenship or fought to get a job, fought for their businesses, and who have a problem with taking in people from other countries and stuff. You look at the situation, what would they say? And how would they handle the situation? And that's how I handled it. I just said no. I couldn't do it. Getting a little tired, And that's our story this week. How do you say no, and how do you care for those with less, especially those who are probably not here legally, doing things legally? How do you say no? How do you stop? And especially when the IRS shows up, you gave all this money to the illegal. Get on the ground now, boy. Get on the ground, boy. Yeah, we got him. His brother been giving money to illegals and housing illegals and giving them. Next thing you know, your FBI, you get turned out of the house, they looking at you, they all getting deported. All the love you gave to them for nothing. Let's wait no time, folks. Let's get to it. Story number one. Speaking of immigrants, where will they go? Folks, Reuters has a report focusing on Trump's first 100 days and how he's been delivering on his deportation efforts. The biggest question in this story is, when people get deported, it's rare that you hear about where or how their new life is going, or where they've gone. Now, this is all while Trump is moving to strip legal status from hundreds of thousands of immigrants, according to the report. Now, the report goes forward to explain how some Ukrainians have even lost status and work permits. Now, the small summary in the report talks about how foreign students are fighting for visa revocations in court. Now, all of this activity has this story staying in top headlines. The report does say that Trump has a 45% approval rating on immigration. The numbers are big, folks. 240,000 Ukrainians and 530,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Story number two. Civil rights lawyers are in top headlines. Why? The Washington Post says that civil rights lawyers have been busy and they're not happy. The report states that the report starts by explaining Donald Trump's social agenda when prompting the departure of about half of the division's lawyers in recent weeks. Now, this is according to people familiar with the situation and public statements from top officials, as stated in the report. Now, the focus is combating anti-Semitism, the participation of transgender athletes in women's sports. This was the focus of I guess, of the current civil rights agenda. Now, it appears that the focus now will be, I guess that was the focus now, but I guess they're trying to change up the focus. So the focus now will be less on racial discrimination and more on fighting diversity initiatives. This is what the report says. Now, what got the story in is the fact that the Civil Rights Division had about 380 attorneys when Trump began his second term, with half of them now leaving. Now, the division was established in 1957 as part of the Civil Rights Act, focusing on racial discrimination and what now looks like after 70 years, and it looks like it's an abandoned mission. So I guess they're going to go from racial issues. This is when you talk about, this is in regards to educational opportunities, housing, employment, voting, and more. This was all what they used to talk about when it came to racial issues. But I guess they're going to be shifting how they handle civil rights issues. And I guess they're going to be talking about other things like diversity and other stuff. Now, this story is still developing. Story number 3, the student loan story. USA Today has a report explaining how Republicans have proposed a massive overhaul of student loans and Pell Grants. The report begins by explaining the massive plan to overhaul how Americans pay for college. The bill is a 100-page budget bill that the report says will reshape much of the college financial aid system. Now, what got the story in is the fact that if the bill is passed, it would change the lives of millions of students by reducing undergraduate students' eligibility for traditional Pell Grants and penalize some universities for saddling students with crushing debt. Now, the report explains how costs for certain college programs would be capped and regulations for-profit colleges would loosen. This is word for word in the report written by Zachary Shermel on April 29th. Now, the report goes on to say that the bill would save hundreds of billions of dollars while also paving the way for tax cuts. Story number 4, cuts to FEMA and Medicaid in top headlines. Fortune has a report explaining how the GOP's proposed cuts to FEMA and Medicaid reveal the paradox of red state dependence. Now, the article cites DOGE, D-O-G-E cuts as imploding, and goes on to say that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is desperate to convince the GOP, the Grand Old Party, the Republicans' budget hawks, that he can find trillions of dollars in federal savings over the next decade. The article basically sees Trump's efforts to account for losses as a failure in the government. Now, the article goes on to inform readers what programs are in danger and cites FEMA and Medicaid as examples. The report is written from one angle but does succeed at pointing out some key numbers. The report may have to have some, the report may have, will give some idea, it gives you some idea of what is taking place in this attempt to save money. That's what the report succeeds at doing. It gives you a little bit of idea of what's happening, but and it also kind of homes you in on what's at stake when it comes to federal spending. Folks, this story is definitely worth a read. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Well, folks, are our top 4 international headlines developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with top 4. So don't you go anywhere. The Mediator and me, Brian West. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Folks, we are still in the state of mind of thinking. Some people think the world is coming to an end, and I'm not gonna lie, when you don't, or you really don't have a lot of idea, when you don't watch a lot of the news, you could be in the state of mind where you feel everything is falling apart. Now, I'm not going to lie, reading so many conflicting stories, there are so many different states of thinking. There are people losing their jobs. There's people who are filing for unemployment. There are people who are losing the, coverage on their food stamps. So some of these people are left in the dust, and there's just a lot happening right now. And it's amazing how a state of thinking could be. Some people are retired on Social Security, and I'm not gonna lie, there are some conflicting reports. Like you listen to one spot where you'll see the president having a town hall with business leaders. You'll see one story where they'll say imports in America are shortening up. So it's very, very important that you probably stay informed, and it is confusing. I'm not gonna lie. And you just got to smack yourself a few times to get, if you're trying to read a story, to comprehend and soak it all in, to try to figure out what's happening. It's amazing what's happening now, that and especially on a global scale. You don't know. Some people are still living third world conditions. Some people have technology, and you read some stories and hear some conversations, and when the misery button is pulled, you'll think it's everything is going to fall apart. And I'm not gonna lie, I stayed in Puerto Rico for 2 weeks when I was in the hospital, so I know what it's like to be, you people say the power goes out, or you have to drink dirty water, or so some people have never had to live like this, but that's what this discussion is in some circles. Some people think that that things are just going to collapse, and sometimes that's not really the case. The president, I listened to some interviews, he says that it's just a transition period. So we'll see what happens in these next few months and as this year goes on. But a lot of people are preaching doom and gloom, and the Lord is coming back soon. We all will be on the way to the promised land, and the rapture will take us to glory. That's what's happening. Well, I'm just telling you, there are false prophets. There are people who stand informed, and there's people who not stand informed. There's people who don't know. People who know. People who may not know. People want to know who, where, when, what, why, and what with God, how. That's why we're heading into these stories, because I hope I'm keeping you informed. Let's waste no time, folks. Let's get to story number 5. Once again, what does Putin and Zelensky want? In the what, when, where, and why? Reuters has a report published April 28th explaining how the pathway for peace seems to be far away, as Putin seems to have no plan to step off of the gas when it comes to whatever plan he has for Ukraine. Now, this is a complicated war because neither side seems to have an end game, but they've only made it clear that they just don't like each other. That's the only thing that they have made clear. Now, this is after Russia's ejection of Ukrainian troops from the Kursk region, ending the biggest incursion into Russian territory since World War II, to basically killing the peace deal. So they killed the peace deal in this. Now, at the moment, Russia seems to be the only force that can stop this war. This story is staying in top headlines. Now, Reuters has a headline stating that Russia sees 2025. They seen in 2025 they're seeing growth in their economy by 1.8% in the trade war scenario. Story number 6. Retailers have had it the worst, and the tariffs could be the dagger. Fortune has a report explaining how retailers are bracing for empty shelves as U.S. imports decline. Now, over the past 8 years, retailers have been hit hard with COVID shutdowns. Now, the online shopping boom, and now they're saying that their supply lifeline is going down due to tariffs. That's when they get the imports in and sell stuff for more than what they bought it for. Folks, the story is still developing. Story number 7, and the top 2 international headlines in developing news stories that made this week. Folks, if you don't get up this early, you can check out the show on the website. I do upload it on Monday, so if you don't get up this early, the website on the screen, you can check it out, the show. Story number 7, Trump's economy is the new topic of concern. CNN has a report published April 30th by Brian Mina explaining how the U.S. economy seems to be going into reverse due to Trump's policy shifts. Now, the report explains how the U.S. economy just had its worst quarter since 2022, citing Donald Trump's policies as a factor. But Trump has gone on the record blaming Biden. Now, this is after gross domestic product took a shift downward. Now, this this is in the middle of what the article calls Trump's chaotic tariffs spree. Now, the president says that he has nothing to do with that this has nothing to do with his tariffs, the fact that the economy is taking a turn. He's blaming it on Biden, but he said this has nothing to do with his tariffs, folks. This story is still developing as retailers prepare for a Chinese pushback. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made this week for you to keep you informed, folks. If you do want to show some support, it does not take much. All you do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program, or you can stop by the store at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio, and see my smiling face and buy something in the store. Story number 8, an impossible way to end the U.S. trade deficit. Fortune has a report published April 28th stating that the Trump administration has chosen to eliminate the elimination of the U.S. trade deficit as its chief economic policy objective. Now, this is word for word in the report. The article calls this misguided and calls Trump's wrong. He says the report says that Trump is wrong by believing that these deficits are the result of foreigners taking advantage of the United States through unfair trading practices. He says that Trump is wrong. Now, the article goes on to say that the U.S. trade deficit is homegrown and it is easy to finance due to the privilege of Americans' access to cheap capital. Now, the article goes on to say that the tariff war is also misguiding the taxpayers and threatens the United States trade surplus in services and the large capital surplus resulting from the United States trade deficit, and goes on to say that Trump is not talking about this. Now, the article written by Stephen H. Hankey and Caleb Hoffman even explains how the U.S. consistently runs a large trade surplus in its service sector. This happened in 2023. This happened in 2023 alone, and some following years. Now, the U.S. imported about $750 billion in foreign services and exported over $1 trillion in domestic service. Now, the article has the data to back up with surpluses across the board, which could shift due to market uncertainty. Folks, the article is long and extensive and is definitely worth read. That's why story number 8 made it to the top this week. Well, folks, there are top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that I made this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out doing the research. As usual, I thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just a mediator, the man in the middle, navigating your stories just to keep people informed. Folks, if you do want to show some support, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something to cook something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program, or you can stop by the store at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio, and see my smiling face. Well, folks, I'm out of here. Have a good week, everybody. Headed into Mother's Day. Also, have a good single day mile if you celebrate it. I'll be back next week. Looks over 200 or more. Just 200 or more stories. Got to get that right. Just to keep you informed. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator this week with me, Brian West. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.